So Gnostic, I was just on the phone with Amalek, and he said try to, I guess, educate him through the lens of COVID with Christianity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, that's
Yeah,
that's really what happened with Christianity's rise. It was social pressure. We look at the first couple of centuries of when Christianity existed, and no, it was not a threat. It was less than 5% of the Roman Empire was Christian. So there was little minority pockets of, like, freed slaves and plebs that were into Christian women and, you know, all types of, foreigners that were into Christianity. That's kinda what attracted people to Christianity was the egalitarian, purposes of it. Anyways, long story short, once it becomes a Roman imperial cult, we're talking 4th century, it's a whole different beast at that point. Now it's being forced on people as a corporate entity, if you will, where if you if you don't, it doesn't matter what you, if you believe in it or not, you have no choice. Like, you will not be given some senatorial power, you will not be given access to, certain funding or whatever the case may be. You're not going to be a part of society if you're not Christian after the 4th century, after Theodosius. So your ancestral customs that they kept for thousands of years, the fire of Vesta lit for 1,000 years, temple of Mars, the temple of Dionysus, temple of Apollo, whatever it was, Aphrodite, her sacred stone that was sitting on the island of Paphos, for since the Bronze Age, and your ancestors, kept that little location sacred, and they lit fires in her honor and all that stuff. All that's gone now. All of your culture gone overnight. It's like, and the reason why I compare it to COVID is because 70% of the world took the COVID vaccine. And most people, even people who I know who are fairly liberal and follow the science, my sister, she's a pharmacist, even she was like, "We rushed that out, and I was not happy about that. I did not want to give people that shot." And but she had to. And so 70% of the world took the shot. But does that mean 70% of the world was on board with the shot? Well, I say the same thing about Christianity. It's like, yeah, all of a sudden you start seeing 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th century in the Middle Ages, you see a whole pagan world flip into a Christian world. But then you look at the primary sources of the time period, and actually you find a lot of people rebelling against the takeover of Christianity. I got a source from the middle of the 4th century. I showed it to Amalek recently, where there is this one guy who was saying that you would get in trouble for looking up at the stars at night because they would say, "Oh, you're doing astrology. That's pagan." That's literally a primary source. There's other sources from the later 8th, 9th century that says that people who were engaging in frivolous laughter while producing wine were doing the rites of Dionysus, so that's pagan too, so they should be arrested. So, like, there was all this crazy shit happening where their ancestral customs were being taken away from them by force, and they were being forced to convert to this foreign religion, really. And, like, even though Christianity does have this aspect of it that is like anti-Jewish, where it's like you got Jesus squaring off with the Pharisees, and he looks like this awesome anti-Jewish like figure. The bottom line is that's just Jewish infighting. That's just like any other two groups that are from the same uh dichotomy going at it, going after each other. It ultimately, though, at the end of the day, even if it's condemning the Pharisees and the ones who reject Jesus, it's still telling you that this place called Israel and Jerusalem was a special place where special people were given a special covenant, and their special prophets predicted a special Messiah would come from this special line called Judah. And everyone else is just basically lucky to be grafted into this special group of people. So even if there's aspects of it that are like, oh, look at Jesus, he's fighting against the Jew. It's like at the end of the day, that's a little drop in the bucket in comparison to the overall structure of Christianity that posits a special race of people who can somehow concoct prophecies that predict the future and tell you that there's going to be a Messiah that you're all going to have to bow to in order to be saved, and that your ancestors are all condemned to hell. So, so either way, like the whole idea of like, oh, Jesus was fighting against the Jews, that's a drop in the bucket in comparison to the bigger picture. that actually makes Jews special and makes Israel special and makes your ancestral customs weak. So I don't even have a problem with like I said a lot there. Anyone else want to speak?
Yeah, let's hop over to Submarine John real quick.
I was gonna say
Submarine John.
real quick there, Gnostic, that it comes to mind that it's simply a brother war. It reminds us of the brother wars that our own people fought. I mean, we have historical examples of infighting between like a race of people. So I mean, that argument doesn't hold water. That it's that he can't be a Jew because he fought Jews.
Right. Like
Yeah.
Socrates got killed by Athenians. So should we hate Athenians now? Should we say that the Athenians are the they're the enemy to reason because Socrates gave us reason. So the Athenians are an enemy to reason now. Like that's silly,
Or
you
Julius Caesar
know?
killed by Romans, ergo he must not be a Roman.
Exactly. It's just as silly to say, yeah, there's infighting going on, so that means we should like there's somehow they're all one hive mind, all like the same. Like no, they're complex groups of people with complex, and they break off into two different groups, rabbinic Judaism and Christianity, and they go in two different directions, but they both come from the same lineage. They're like brother and sister traditions from what is called Judaism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll yield to Submariner now. Go ahead, dude.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, I just had a question for Gnostic. Maybe you know more about this than I do, but I think it's in Acts when Paul is, retelling the story of his vision of Jesus, and he uses this phrase "kick against the goads" or like
Yeah.
"kick against the pricks." I was reading, if you read like Orthodox literature or Orthodox commentaries on it, they'll just kind of brush over that. But if you read non-Christian commentaries on it, it'll say he's basically just quoting Euripides.
Yeah, it's in the Bacchae.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, is that the
Same
scholarly
phrase,
consensus?
the exact same phrase in Greek is used by Dionysus when he's talking to Pentheus. It's in the
So
Bacchae.
then I guess
Yeah.
my question, so I've read that from Orthodox commentaries, but I guess I couldn't find any reason, like, I guess what would I mean, and it would all just be conjecture, but what is the reason that they think that, Paul, who's a Pharisee, he's a Jewish guy,
They
would be quoting Euripides?
they think they're doing mimesis. They're using cultural norms that are. This is actually a good question. This is like me and Adam Green. This is where me and him agree on, was that the Gospels are employing like they're employing big or like literary devices that try to like get the ear of the Greco-Roman person to go, oh yeah, that sounds like us. So like in that particular case, you have Paul using a phrase that's from one of their famous plays, Euripides Bacchae, that everyone's familiar with this play. Everyone knows this play. And you have Paul using language like that, and they're just, and to them, it's like, oh, Paul's like us. Paul's like another philosopher. He's like another, yeah, man. This is great. It sounds very relatable. It sounds very it's like they're targeting a Greco-Roman audience with that type of language, with that type of rhetoric. Does that make
So
sense?
this is like his whole, to a Gentile become a Gentile, to a Jew I'm a Jew kind of thing.
He literally tells you that. He literally says,
Yeah, right.
yeah, he literally
This
says,
is
to
an
the
example of that.
Jews, I
Yeah.
act like a Jew to win them over. And then to the Gentiles, I act like a Gentile to win them over. Like, why would you read that? How can people read that epistle and go, yeah, I trust this guy. Let's follow this guy. You know?
Yeah, and I guess one other thing, this is something I was reading because I like to research. Actually, just one thing real quick. I watched your video on, I think it was the parallels between Jesus and who was the pre-Stoic dude who lived in a barrel? What's his name?
Diogenes.
Diogenes.
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool video, by the way. But
Yeah,
the
thanks.
question I have is, so like you read in, I think it's in Matthew, maybe Jesus is talking to the apostles, and he's like, hey, if you see someone in a wild place or in a wilderness, don't listen to them. And then I was just thinking, like I was rereading Acts, and sure enough, Paul has this vision on the road to, I think, Damascus.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, are there any scholars that kind of, I don't know, point this out, right? Like Jesus, again, I mean, I know the pulse on this room is that it's all bullshit. But from like people who are operating within the paradigm, do they find it odd that, you know, in the Gospels Jesus is saying, hey, you know, don't, if you hear someone, you know, getting revelation from me in a wilderness, and then sure enough, Paul, who had no connection to Jesus, later claims to have revelation from Jesus in like a wilderness or in a, you know,
Yeah, that's crazy,
remote
right?
place.
There's a lot of weird.
Is there any literature on that?
Well, you reminded me. There's Nina Livesey wrote a book recently that I just finished reading. She doesn't even think Paul existed, and this is
What was the name? Sorry, what was the name?
Nina Livesey, and the book is called. Hold on one second. It's called the Letters of Paul in their Roman literary context. So it's peer reviewed through Cambridge. Like this is like no joke. This is scholarly, and this girl, Nina, she's a professor of Pauline studies. Like this isn't like her just like jumping into something she doesn't know. This is what she's been studying her whole career, and she's finally come to the conclusion that she doesn't even think Paul existed. She thinks that Paul is a literary character, and that his epistles were, because there's a genre in Platonism and Pythagoreanism of fake epistles, like Seneca. There's the epistles of Seneca. They're not real. They're fake epistles, but like they're packed with philosophy, and that's what she thinks Paul's letters are doing. That they're theological treatises that are supposed to be read out in churches, but they're not real. And Paul, whose name is actually Saul, was on the road to Damascus chasing down the followers of Jesus, right? And then he gets a vision, and then he repents and becomes a follower. Well, guess what? In the Old Testament, Saul, King Saul, same name, also from the tribe of Benjamin. You can't make this up. Saul in the New Testament says, I'm a Benjaminite, right? He tells us that. That's what the text says. King Saul in the Old Testament, from Kings and Chronicles, he's from the tribe of Benjamin, and guess what he's doing? He's chasing around David in the story. David's called the Messiah, the anointed one of God, and he's chasing David around, and then David touches him from behind, and he turns around and repents and says he's sorry. And then that's right before Saul dies. Saul dies repenting that he ever was against David's cause, and he realizes that David is the chosen anointed king and that he's not. So Nina points out, look, this is such a coincidence how in the New Testament you have a guy named Saul who's from the same tribe, Benjamin, chasing around the Messiah and then repents. In the Old Testament, you have another guy named Saul chasing around the Lord's anointed one and then repents. She's like, for those two things to happen in both Old and New Testament, that's crazy. So she thinks that this is all just made up. And so far, this is just like fresh stuff. This is brand new scholarship. So I don't know how much she's convincing a lot of people. I'm somewhat convinced by what she says. I think at the very least, a lot of this shit is made up, even if there was a guy named Paul.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Uh,
And then I guess, well, actually, I was going to ask another question, but there's someone else who had their hand up, so I'll let them go. Wotan and Green Eye. But I have
You want to go
question.
first? You want me? Yeah.
I mean, it kind of pertains to what we're talking about.
Yeah, same with mine, but you can go ahead if you want.
Yeah, you go, Wotan. You had your hand up first.
Just to add on to that, a lot of Christians come in here like last night and say, well, God, got rid of the covenant with his chosen people. But even Paul is asked in Romans, and like Romans 11, I asked then, did God reject his people? And he says, by no means, I'm an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Judah. So his covenant's still the same. And then in Deuteronomy, he's talking about how they're his cherished, beloved people. So I just wanted to add on to that. So a lot of people come in here and say that they're no longer his chosen people at all.
Yeah.
Gnostic, I wanted to. I don't think you were in the room when I was speaking to this point, but I was talking directly about we were talking about Paul and Saul and the road to Damascus and everything. And for me, going studying the history, it's what kind of becomes apparent to me is that Christianity started to take root and started to spread among the Roman Empire shortly after the Jewish people were nearly annihilated to extinction under Emperor Hadrian and the forces of the Roman Empire, and you had the destruction of the Second Temple. I'm, and we didn't see the majority of, the Christian writings, the Gospels and such, until long after Jesus supposedly lived, and coming up around the time after the destruction of the Second Temple. So I'm kind of theorizing based off, I don't have, a lot of the evidence down, but that, in response to this near annihilation of the Jewish people, that the Christian religion was kind of concocted as like a kind of new strategy to kind of like subvert Rome from within. And like I was just kind of suspecting that it might be possible
Yeah.
that this sort of conversion of Saul might have to do with some kind of sit down that he might have had, because he was a high level Pharisee. He had a lot of influence within the Pharisees and their on conclave, and that they might have, if they're going off the premise that he existed, they might have kind of sat down with him and tasked him to kind of adopt this new strategy. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's because like once the temple's destroyed, all of a sudden Christianity makes perfect sense because you have a religion that's still comes out of the Jewish tradition, still comes out of the tradition of the prophets and Genesis and Psalms and Proverbs and all that stuff. But what it's doing is it's restructured now to no longer focus on one area or one temple, but more of a global spread, and it's universal. Now it's all the cities have their own churches, and it looks like it's more palatable for a diaspora, which is actually what's ironic about that is the first generation of Christians were Jews, and like that's how the first Christians were just straight up Jews that were more likely to like you know, act like Greeks. Like they spoke Greek and they probably hung out at like plays in Athens and stuff like that. They're like your liberal Jews from New York. They're like that's like how the early Christians were. And they were converting Gentiles to their cause. And that's how Christianity really starts. So like so that's why a lot of people think like the timing is actually odd too. Like for like mythicists will point out that Jesus is literally born 70 years before the temple fell. And David also was 70 years old when he died. And he was at age 30 starts his kingship. All these numbers are lining up between Jesus and David. It's like they're trying to make a new David out of Jesus. That's what it seems like. But instead of having this temple in Jerusalem that everything's based out of, now they're trying to actually just take over the Roman Empire and try to like get power through, I don't know, like the cities, the polises and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm gathering. And in one of Marcus Eli Ravage's works, he writes a real case against the Jews, and he accredits Christianity directly with the fall of Rome, and that conveniently it took root after after they were nearly annihilated by said Rome. And it just seems to me that if this was an
Right.
accident, I'm gathering that this wasn't an accident, that this was that this was a devised plan. Because if this was just a coincidence that that this religion was like you know being spread among Jews and it like accidentally caught fire among Gentiles, then it's their most successful accident in history.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're not trying to hide the fact that they want to evangelize and spread and become more powerful. They're not like that's not like up for debate. That's what the church fathers are telling us. Like they're talking about, they're bragging, like Eusebius is bragging about getting Philip the Arab, one of the emperors of the 3rd century, to get him to do a baptism. And that was a big step forward of their project. Like, oh, we just literally got one of the emperors to get baptized. And then next thing you know, Philip the Arab, I think he was emperor like 235 or 250 or somewhere around there. All of a sudden he starts minting coins with biblical scenes on them of like Noah's Ark or whatever. All of a sudden he starts being nice to them. He starts like paying lip service to them. All of a sudden you start seeing them get a foothold in the system, even though they're not even a legal religion yet. Even before that, the what is it called? The dynasty that from the 200s, what is it? 200. What I'm drawing a blank. what was the whatever? The Julia Mamaea was one of the empresses. The mother, she was the mother of the last emperor of that dynasty, and they were the first dynasty in the Roman Empire. Not only did they take away Roman citizenship as a sacred thing, they made everyone a Roman citizen, but they also sort of propped up Christianity for the first time. Um, and this empress, Julia Mamaea, was the first actual Christian empress on record, and she lived a whole 100 years before Constantine. So even before Constantine, even before Theodosius, you can see them trying to like hatch on like a virus into the Roman aristocracy. Is like they're like it's like they like latch on to anyone who will give them attention. Oh, we got Philip the Arab. All right, we got him. Now he's he got. I guess you could say, quote unquote, he got the call. You know what I mean? So like you could see examples of that in the pre-Constantine era of like certain high level Christian or high level Gentiles becoming Christians or paying lip service to Christians for whatever reason. But
Yeah, it
yeah,
seems to me like some very kind of ancient form of lobbying.
yeah. Oh, it's the
Um,
I was thinking of the Severan dynasty. Severan dynasty. I don't know. I couldn't think of their name.
if you don't mind me asking, Gnostic, so who was the woman that you said that didn't say that, or said that Paul didn't even exist?
Nina Livesey.
All right, now
Nina.
would she hold the same belief that like Gamaliel didn't exist either?
I don't know if she said that. I'm not sure.
Well, where's the document? I mean, it would only make sense to question Saul Paul too. Like that
Yeah.
would just be like, why wouldn't you? The guy literally made up meeting Jesus.
Right.
So
Yeah. Nobody. There's. You know what's funny about that? Paul writes all these letters. No, we don't have any letters to Paul. We don't have anyone. We don't know. There's nobody from the first century who talks about knowing Paul. Isn't that something? No one ever thinks about that because you think, oh, we have letters. Oh, so then he definitely existed. We have his letters. He wrote letters, and then all of a sudden Nina's pointing out, wait a minute though. I don't know if you guys noticed this. There's a whole genre from this time period of fake epistles, and she said the way that these epistles are written are textbook example of what you would find in like Seneca's moral epistles, for example, where it looks like Seneca's writing a letter to one of his students, and really it's just a bunch of philosophical jargon it's for your reading purposes. That's why people still read Paul's epistles in church today. It's not a real letter. It's supposed to be read in church. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
It's not a natural letter is like, hey, I'm in Turkey right now. I'm about to get on a ship. I'll be there in 2 weeks. How's everything going? And Paul's sitting there talking about the Lord Christ crucified, and in his name we are saved, in the blood we are washed away in our sins. Like, this is not a normal letter, dude. This is a theological treatise. It's not a letter. This is
yeah,
something that someone made up.
and it lends credence to what you were saying earlier, that these epistles were written with the express purpose of appealing to the Greeks. So I mean, for it to
Yes.
be like, I mean, so the fact that it is like it is, kind of engineered towards them. I mean, it would. I mean, all this coming together is too coincidental for me. It doesn't sit right.
Yeah, like one of the biggest themes in Paul's epistles to the Romans is like, oh, all that law stuff that you guys hate about the Jews, don't even worry about it. You don't even have to do it all. You don't even have to get circumcised if you really don't want to. Just, just make sure you're on our side. Like, just be with like, just align with us. Like, that's all. Just give us your 1/10 of your money. Just like fun, that's all.
And on,
So
on
like
that
Paul's
note,
whole message.
oh,
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, I'm gonna be bringing up the guests, so Wotan, hold off on that. Green Eyed, hold off on that. We got Jake in here, and I was thinking this is gonna be an awesome conversation with him and Gnostic, just to kind of see what's going on, because Gnostic, you kind of stumbled in upon this like hoax thing too, right? And like you were a Christian at one point, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, for a long time. I was going to church twice a week. First one there with the key and everything.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know if this is Jake's like how many spaces he's been in here. But yeah, we're kind of talking about the historicity of Jesus, and now the question is Saul. So I don't know if Jake knows, like, most Christians, like, I didn't know that Saul changed his name to Paul and that he wrote, 2/3 of the New Testament. And so now what's under investigation, for those who don't know, Saul allegedly met Jesus, but he never met Jesus in the flesh, right? Gnostic?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, he never met him.
So he wrote this entire New Testament without even meeting Jesus. He spoke to,
He just met him in a vision. That's it.
he met him in a vision. So, Jake, welcome. Good to see you, man. Jake might be new with you gotta hit like unmute and then boom, you're right in.
What's up, Jake?
He's new to this. He's a little bit boomer tech on the space. So how do we how do we get him to do the unmute button?
There's like an
Where is it?
unmute button in the bottom left, and it'll just tell you. Say you're muted.
It'll say mic is off. You just tap.
Okay. Now can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud
Yeah.
and clear, man.
Yeah, I'm a boomer to space. The second time I've been on them, I never do them. So.
Can
Okay.
snap a dude's spine, can't unmute a mic.
Yeah, right. I said, "Fuck it, I'll try out of space."
So Gnostic is a big brain guy, super duper smart, and he was a Christian at one point
I'm
too.
a dummy. I'm a dummy.
And Gnostic, you kind of want to like go back and forth with Jake for a little bit, like where you're at, like the passion of like kind of talking about this subject.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like really digging into this subject for like more than a decade now. I'm doing it as I started doing it on YouTube now for like over 5 years now, and I guess where I'm at is like I started to realize that like Christianity, the origins of Christianity, and how it rose up and became like the central culture of our Western civilization, is not exactly what we're told through tradition. And I think there's a lot more co-opting of traditions that were already there, for example, like Platonism, Pythagoreanism, Orphism, stuff like that, like the morality aspect. Like we're told that, the pagans were basically like a bunch of orgiastic
Savages, whatever. Yeah.
savages that were doing cannibals, and then Christians came along and civilized us. And then you look at history and you find out it's actually not even close to that.
Yeah.
In fact, most of the human sacrifice stuff was actually going on in Judea, believe it or not.
Interesting.
But
Yeah, not
yeah,
surprising.
yeah, that's just like some of the stuff I look into and finding out like, okay, even if Jesus existed, like I'm on the fence about if he exists or not. I actually
Yeah.
lean towards there being a guy. Adam Green thinks he didn't exist at all. But even if he did exist, the stuff that's in the Gospels attributed to him seem to be drawn from motifs like you and Adam were talking about, like the idea of carrying his own cross to his own death is like a mirror image of Isaac carrying his wood to the sacrifice of Abraham sacrificing Isaac. And then you have like all these motifs from the old, like Jesus dipping his bread and saying, the one who will eat this bread will betray me. Well, there's a psalm in the Old Testament where it says, the betrayer will break bread with the Lord's anointed. Like there's all this stuff. You can literally take all the pieces from the Old Testament and write the New Testament with it. And
Interesting.
So, yeah.
I find it interesting that like it seems like on the right there's a huge rise in paganism. For example, I just interviewed Richard Spencer today. It's not out yet, but he's
Nice.
huge on what did he call it? Apolloism,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is a similar idea. So it seems to be rising up everywhere on the far right. I guess is it because like the original white religions, or what do you
Yeah,
think?
it's
is
our
causing it?
ancestral. It's because it's our ancestral. It's our true ancestral customs was Apollo worship, was Zeus, was Athena. Those were the gods that were worshipped by not just Greek, Romans, Indo-Europeans in general. You find cognates of Zeus, Dies Pitar, for example, the Sky Father in Germany, in France, in all the way in Russia. Like they have their own versions of these gods, but they have similar pantheons, and there's a lot of overlap in between. So where people are starting to go, they want to go back to their actual ancestral customs rather than the ones that were forced down to our throat.
Yeah.
And like before you got here, I used COVID as a way to explain Christianity because everyone likes to talk about what our ancestors converted to Christianity. Doesn't that mean that they wanted to be Christians? But I'll also say to you, 70% of the world got the COVID vaccine. Does that mean that
True.
70% of the world wanted the COVID vaccine, or was it forced on them through social pressure?
Yeah, and a lot of it might have been, you know, convert or die.
Yeah. And even if they weren't killing people, like convert or die, there were still like if you didn't convert, you would not be respected, you would not be treated the same, you would be looked at as like an idiot or someone who's a backwater or dirty pagan. So even if they weren't being like put swords to their throats, they were still being socially pressured to
Mhm.
become Christian.
Yeah, and that happened basically everywhere all over the West.
Yeah, for like 1,000 years until late medieval period, and by then pretty much the whole West is Christian at that point.
How many years did like paganism go on? Like hundreds or thousands or
I mean, paganism is really just your base natural set of religious customs that your ancestors handed down. So like
so there's not a clear definition of is that paganism
exactly,
religion?
like we're talking Stone Age. Like it's the oldest. There's nothing that predates paganism. Is just like your natural state of worshiping nature and
So
whatnot.
thousands and thousands of years for sure. We don't know exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
40,000 years, it could be up to 40,000 years. So when you look at like what 2,000 years, that's a drop in the bucket.
Right.
But it's not just with whites, it's also with other races.
Other races.
Weren't other races practicing
Yeah.
like a
Africa had their whole Yoruba thing going on. They should go. They shouldn't be Christians either. If I was a Sudanese black person, I would be wanting to go back to my ancestral religion. I wouldn't want to be some cucked religion of someone else. You know what I mean?
So what's like the realistic goal, right? I know a lot of these pagans are super anti-Christian, but it's like Christianity is so indoctrined in a lot of Americans. So what's the move to take it out without causing like massive infighting? Or I guess it's not really possible.
I think right now people just need to know the history, and if they like, if people can learn the history, like the true history, and find out, like, wait a minute, for example, only less than 5% of the Roman Empire was Christian for the first 3 centuries of its existence. Then in the
Mhm.
4th century, it goes from 5% to more than half the empire because of the Roman aristocracy pushing it on
Mhm.
people. So if people learn that fact, they're going to go, wait a minute, my ancestors didn't want to convert. Wait, so that does that mean I have a choice now to correct the past or correct the wrongs that were done to my ancestors? Maybe if people understood they have a choice, that could get the tables turned. I think.
Yeah, paganism has been so vilified. People think like the blue-haired liberal, and I've been meeting so many like white nationalist men that are pagans in the past year, and that's just been completely fascinating to me. I want to make a little like mini low-budget documentary on it, try to figure out like what this rise is, like what is it. It's such an interesting story.
Yeah.
And Neil's a big brain. Neil, how big is your? Sorry to flex the YouTube channel, but Neil's just not some like just random dude. Like,
Oh,
how
nice.
big is that YouTube channel that you got going
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now?
My channel's got 230,000 subs.
Oh, nice. Why don't we either HT connect or I'll DM you or something because I have some questions on some of this paganism stuff. I'm trying to
Definitely.
do a little research on it.
Definitely, Jay. Definitely.
So I'll just DM you, or if HT has your number, whatever, I'll get it from
Yo,
him.
yo,
Yeah,
guys,
just
can I
follow me.
interject real quick? I got something real quick for Jake.
Yeah.
Let's go.
What's up, Jake?
Yeah,
I
what's
saw the clip of you and Leonardo the other day, and you talked about Jesus flipping the tables on the
Yeah.
temple.
Yeah.
And I know you're a vegetarian or vegan, so you interviewed that Christspiracy guy, and
Yeah.
he talks a lot about that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to share. It really seems like that's a mythical story because when they detail the account, they have all this scripture being referenced. So
Yeah.
like it says, Jesus says that my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. And that's just a quote from the Old Testament. And then he says that this house which bears my name become a den of robbers. So he calls it a den of robbers.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't exist and actually call the Jews in the temple a den of robbers. This
Yeah.
is a story based on that prophecy from Jeremiah.
Yeah. Well,
And you know
they
what's
did.
crazy about that
If
is the
you,
Old Testament is constantly doing this sort of self-hating, self-whipping. We like the Old Testament is like constantly calling the Jews what does it call them? It calls them back back whatever it's called.
Stiff neck.
Stiff-necked. Yeah. It's constantly like self-hating. Like that's like the nature of Judaism. Is to go we suck. God needs to save us. They're going to kick us out again. We're going to lose our temple. Like the prophecies are all doom. They're like the biggest doomers
the,
ever.
yeah, the temple did have massive animal sacrifice though, which seems. I mean, I'm pretty sure that part's true. They had like giant
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It,
that's
it, it-
definitely true.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like
100%.
disgusting. So much blood was
Yeah, but
coming
that's
out. They had these
if
giant.
Jesus, according to Christians, Jesus is God. So that was Jesus that was commanding those sacrifices to begin with from the
Yeah, I
Christian
mean,
framework.
me obviously don't believe the Trinity stuff. I mean, is this
Yeah.
Adam? Is this Adam I'm speaking to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I did try doing a little research when I was interviewed. I was trying to find some information against Jesus being Jewish, and yeah, it didn't go too well.
Also, did you know Netanyahu? Like, because this is the huge meme for Christians online. Like, they love Jesus with the whip and the money changers, right, in the temple. Like,
Mhm.
but did you know Netanyahu was just talking about that the other day? Netanyahu was like, "Yeah, Jesus,
Whipped
went to
the.
the temple and flipped the tables. He even shilled that line."
Yeah, but well, let's say even if Jesus Israel isn't real, I think him attacking bankers and people sacrificing humans could be a positive story still.
Well, I mean, it wasn't bankers. It was just people that were changing the money to do the
Yeah,
sacrifices. Like it's like even if it was true, it's just a Jew mad that like the Jews aren't doing right in the Jewish temple.
Jesus in there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's possible Jesus
It's
could have been like a really good, the myth of the good Jew, Jesus.
He's like the folk hero, the anti-establishment folk hero, but also the king of the Jews that all the goyim are supposed to follow. But
Yeah,
anyway, I just wanted to share those verses with you. Like that story is like mythology. The other one is Psalm 69. It says, "Zeal for your house consumes me." So Jesus, like the whole story is just like inspired by these different prophecies,
well,
and
it's written
it's
way
made
after
up. I
his.
just
It's
wanted to share
written
that.
way after his death. I know how many years after his death. I'm sure you guys probably know in here. Like,
Yeah,
40
exactly. Yeah,
40
that stuff
plus
in the
40 plus.
Gospels is like 4 decades after his death.
yeah, I couldn't imagine like looking back, 40 years ago, trying to write. Well, I guess I'd have been 6 years old. And also, how many
Uh,
times has it been like and put through different languages and interpreted? And so, I mean,
mhm.
I agree. There's major problems. Like, I don't know if Jesus is real or
And if
isn't.
the Talmud writes about Jesus, don't you think that's something that they would have mentioned? They would have been like, "That son of a bitch fucked up our temple tables." Like, but it doesn't say that in there.
By the
Yeah.
way, this is normal for the prophets of the Old Testament to act like this. For example, in Amos, one of the
Hmm.
prophets from the Old Testament, Amos goes and says this. He goes, "I will not revoke the punishment of Israel because they sell the righteous for silver, and they sell for gold and silver and this stuff like whatever he says, something along those lines." It's Amos 2. And the thing I'm getting across right now is that Hosea does this too, by the way. Hosea says the land of Israel commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord. That's Hosea 1:2. Isaiah's like this too. And they're constantly talking shit against their fellow Jews for not being righteous enough.
Hmm.
So for Jesus to go around doing this is like it's like a dime of dozen for Jewish people in the first century. They're all doing this. They're all fighting each other and acting like I'm the greatest and you're not. That's like what
Jews
they were doing.
sounds very Jewish.
Exactly. It's like they're out doing
Like
each
Ben
other.
Shapiro hating on some leftist Jew.
Yeah,
I gotta
right.
get in here real
Exactly.
quick because there's one thing that I noticed on the Leonardo thing, and Jake, like
Hmm.
natural instinct, you're like, if someone kills one of my family members, I'm not gonna forgive them.
Fuck no.
Right? But as a Christian, and this is the mix up that we're getting, where it's like, oh, this is subversion. This is Christianity being subverted. Well, this passage in the Bible, right? Luke 17, it instructs you to love and pray for your enemies and to forgive them. So that's what we're trying to get there is like it's not the Schofield, it's Christianity. Christianity is the subversion where
Hmm.
we can never actually get vengeance because it's for the Lord, right? And we can't really, do anything about our enemies. We're supposed to love them and pray for them. So that's, I think, the misnomer that we're finding here, where it's like, well, it's Judeo Christianity. It's like, Well, yeah, it is Judeo because it started off with Jews, and
You,
you're never going to be able to get rid of that. That's the history.
unfortunately, there's some truth there. I feel like
Mhm.
you could maybe try to do a weird version, like my podcast manager ever a version of Christianity that cuts the Judaism out. Maybe it's not real, but I don't know. Maybe it could be beneficial anyways to be like, no, Jesus isn't a Jew. I don't know the answer because people, I just feel like they're so ingrained with Christianity. It's such a hard sell to convince them otherwise. They automatically just get angry and. I don't know. Yeah, maybe in a generation or two it could change though, but it's not an easy fight. So when you're fighting
Well,
against,
don't you think it could be the second act though? Like the first act was we figured out who the Jews were, and it
yeah,
was quite the struggle. Look at all of us, like Adam and myself have been in this for like 10 years,
yeah,
close to 10 years calling out the Jews. And now it's like, okay, how do we get into this mess? Well, maybe
Christianity.
we were worshiping a Jew and lifting the water for him by, carrying the water by saying, hey, these are God's chosen people.
Yeah, I see your point. I just don't. I feel like people are so indoctrinated. That fight's going to take so long. It might be that might be like a 20-30 year task, but maybe maybe
Yeah.
before you can still get them to take the Jew part out of the fucking religion. Because I
What do
know,
you think, Gnostic? What do you
Well,
think about it? Is he
how
right?
you it's like if you gut all the Jewish stuff out of the religion, what do you have left? You
I
literally
no, I
because
see your
Jesus is
point, but
dependent. Jesus, all of his prophecies that he fulfills are all dependent on all this Old Testament stuff. I mean, like I mentioned before, I actually pulled up the verse. I wanted to make sure I said it right from Amos 2. Amos brings judgment on Israel. He says, "For the sins of Israel, even for 4, I will not relent. They sell innocent for silver. They trample on the heads of the poor, and they deny justice to the oppressed, father and son, and so profane my holy name." Blah blah blah. Anyways, what I'm saying is this. I we shouldn't even care that there are other Jewish people like Amos or Jesus or Isaiah speaking out against quote unquote evil Jews when we have our own ancestral customs. Let them figure that out over there. We have Apollo, like Richard Spencer starting Apollo's.
Apolloism. Yeah, that was
Yeah, like
I'd
that's
never heard
why
that term, but yeah, we talked about that today.
exactly. Like why can't we have our own infighting where we can argue about Dionysus and Apollo? Why are we arguing over? Well, those Jews were selling money in the temple, and this one wasn't, so he's a good one. So we should follow the good one,
Yeah,
right? You know what
I
I'm
think
saying?
I think maybe long term you guys are correct, and I think you are correct. But maybe short term you get these guys to worship a false Christianity. Because I have lots of people that still consider themselves Christianity, but they're turning on Israel and the Jews. So maybe it's not the proper Christianity, but there's no way these people are giving up Jesus or Christianity, but they're willing to be like, wait, these guys have fucking manipulated us. So
Yeah,
it's complex. I don't think you guys are wrong in what you're saying, but I just
it's
don't
very
know.
complex.
Yeah, but
Well,
just how do you actually make the jump is what I'm
well,
saying.
Christianity is the puppet, and Judaism is the hand going up the puppet's ass. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's it.